You are listening to Humanities Engaged, where we take a closer look at the value of a liberal arts education. I'm Steve McFarland, and I teach philosophy in the Division of Humanities at the University of Minnesota Morris. I'm joined by UMM student and brains of the operation, Adam Kretz. Say hi, Adam.
Hey there, everybody. Thank you for listening. You'll hear me chime in occasionally during the interview with a couple questions, and I'll join Steve afterwards to discuss what we learned.
We are coming to you from the University of Minnesota Morris, made possible with funding from the Mellon Foundation. Please join us as we interview UMM faculty to learn how they teach and why they teach.
Today's guest is Charles Hassinger. Charles is a friend and a student here at the University of Minnesota Morris. And now, the interview.
I guess first thing to know is that I'm a non-traditional student, and I am a transfer student. So I went to Ridgewater College first, and I, got my associates out the way, and then I transferred here, and this is my second year here. I study sociology with an emphasis in criminology and deviance, and in terms of extracurriculars, I'm involved with CNIA. McNair Scholar. I'm part of the NAS program. So NAS is a Native American Student Success Program, and I mentor freshman students from indigenous backgrounds. Because the first year experience is it's a challenge. To be able to figure out how to navigate academia. Especially with regards to, Native students, a lot of them come here from, small communities where it's real tight-knit and, everybody knows everybody and you have a large support system, and you come to this space and you really don't have that. So it can be a big culture shock, but, not only for Native students, just for a student in general, so I really enjoy that work.
Yeah, were you helped out when you first got started here, or did you kind of figure it out on your own?
No, I just figured it out on my own. I was invited to NAS events, although, I really didn't understand the scope of what they did and, the resources that they have and how they really help students. I did start getting involved with it, though, last year, in spring semester towards the end, so that's when I started really learning about NAS and what an asset it is to this campus.
Awesome. Yeah, well, I want to get into some of those extracurriculars and, like you mentioned, the McNair Scholarship a little bit later. But first, we start off there with kind of what you're studying. And so did you decide to do, sociology with this criminal, deviance part? Did you do that starting here, or were you interested in that before?
Well, I always knew that I wanted to study criminology, even before I started my academic career. But I really didn't know what that entailed. I didn't know that how you could go about it discipline wise. And then I met a sociology professor for the first time, and he broke it down to me how to study sociology but within criminology, so applying theoretical aspects of sociology within studying crime. So yeah, that's how that came about. And after I started taking sociology classes, I just loved it, the theory. I really love the theory. This coming academic year in the fall, I'm taking theory just to audit it, I've already taken that course, but I want to audit it again just so I can have a refresher, before I go to grad school, because I love social theory. So,
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know, do you want to speak to, why you knew you were interested in studying crime, or?
I always was fascinated by, crime, even when I was younger. But then, as I grew up, and I saw a lot of injustices in my own community, how poverty affects people, and how in some cases, it pushes people to, do criminal acts, out of the need to survive. I wanted to understand that better. So my second year of school, my cousin was murdered, and he was a gang member. So, that further developed my passion to understand, certain aspects of criminality, to better help, society. So when I'm feeling unmotivated for my studies, I think about my cousin Forrest, and how he just had his life taken away at such a young age, all because he was a part of a gang. And that helps me a lot.
Mm. Yeah, well, appreciate you sharing about that. That's some strong motivation to
Yeah.
have right there. Is kind of, as you're studying, is it to understand it better? Is it to ultimately be able to do something about it? Is it both? Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, it's both. Better understanding. For me, but then with better understanding, I can, be able to help, younger people that are like caught in adverse situations, so they don't, maybe go down that path into crime. That's where I want to go with it. So basically, most of my criminology research revolves around young people, so like adolescents. And my goal is always to try to, further the knowledge within criminology, but then be able to help like outreach programs for young people to deter them from engaging in, like, say, criminal or deviant behaviors.
Yeah, I was working as a volunteer in the southwest side of Chicago for a year, and it was an after-school program for junior high and high school kids.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be this pretty, kind of solid community organization. It was on the top of a church building, and they used to get a lot of like funding from the government and this kind of thing. And so it kind of had a lot of resources and had a lot of employees. By the time I got there, it was just me and basically the one other guy who had been running it the whole time. And in the area they were, gang activity was something that was part of their life.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a real eye opener for me, because I could kind of see how having a community after school program like this was super helpful, where with some of the kids, especially the junior high kids who had actually, we would have most of them who would show up and want to hang out, and we'd play games and we'd do lots of other stuff, and they'd hang out for hours, right? And if we have a good basketball game going, we'd play for hours. And so I just wonder, in any of your sociological research, is there anything that's come up about that kind of thing?
I mean, that is repeated over and over in research that I've done, getting young people to engage in extracurriculars, especially when there's, a little bit of older person to be involved. They, take that as mentorship, young people, they're very aware of what's going on, and if they see somebody that, is a positive role model to them, it doesn't even have to be a formal mentorship, but, they just see somebody that's doing positive things with them, or spending time with them in positive ways. That is a big deterrent for them not to join a gang, especially like the extracurriculars. I mean, and it could be anything. It could be small, just like, playing games, like you said, with them, or like, sports. Those are really big, for people who are like caught in bad situations, because a lot of it with young gang members, I don't want to generalize because it's not synonymous to everybody's situation, but a lot of people that join gangs, they come from single parent homes, and then so you only have one person in the home, and this person is probably working, maybe 2 jobs, and so they don't have somebody to watch over them, so after school they're on their own. So what are they going to do if they don't have nobody telling them, you need to do this, you need to do that. Don't be playing in the street. Stay away from this person. They're just going to run around and do whatever, and maybe they establish the wrong type of relationships. So those extracurriculars, they really guide them, and they give them structure and positive activities to do along with, maybe mentorship.
And so, yeah, you're kind of saying like this is something that is like a solid finding within sociology, is that these factors are a pretty big,
Yeah.
strongly correlated or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Man, that's interesting. So, yeah, I'm kind of wondering with these classes that you've been taking, is there one in particular that's had, an especially big impact on you? You've probably taken a lot of classes. It doesn't necessarily have to be one of these sociology classes, but you've been here for the past 2 years, and various professors. Is there one class where maybe the kind of stuff you were learning there, or the kind of methodology or ways of thinking that you were learning there was just maybe really affected you?
I mean, all my classes, really affect me, but I take my academics, highly seriously. I'm not here to play and, play games and, whatnot. Like, I'm here to be a student. I'm here to learn and to grow and try to, hopefully one day give back in meaningful ways. So, all my classes have a meaningful impact. If I could narrow it down to one class, it would have to be like, my juvenile delinquency class and, criminology class, those really, especially the juvenile delinquency class, that just really was an eye-opening experience in general.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Is there anything about that class you could just touch on?
Just a lot of like the theoretical framework, that goes to explain like why a young person would engage in crime. One thing that always sticks out in my mind is, and I bring this up in a lot of my writings, or, if I see an opportunity for correlation in other classes, is what's called labeling theory. So labeling theory is when a young person maybe gets in trouble with the juvenile justice system, and then they go through that process, and let's say a police officer or somebody that works in the judicial system labels that young person a criminal, right? And maybe they're just in there because they skipped school, or maybe they did a small theft at a grocery store or whatnot, and don't get me wrong, stealing is wrong and it's bad, but to label a young person a criminal because they stole something, I don't feel that's right. But so labeling theory says, though, once an authority figure labels a young person with criminality, then they take that to heart, right? And then they own that label. So in a sense, that helps them develop their criminality. They say, oh, this person says I'm a criminal. Well, then I must just be a criminal, and let me go out doing criminal things. So the label then pushes them to fulfill what they believe a criminal is.
Wow. Yeah, that's a super compelling insight. We were talking about something similar in my psychology classes about how mental disorder labels can be similar in being like a self-fulfilling prophecy of sorts. But
yeah, essentially self-fulfilling prophecy works hand in hand with the labeling theory within, criminology. Yeah. So,
yeah,
because basically, that's what it is. They're labeled and then they fulfill that prophecy.
Yeah. So you talked about being a like very serious-minded student, and is there any way like you would, what does that mean to you, I guess, or like what is a serious student like characterized by?
I mean, I just I'm here to learn, and I look at my academics as a job, But granted, I love my job. I love this place. I love the learning. But also, for me personally, this place has given me so much, has enabled me to grow so much and learn so much and develop as a person. For me personally, because of everything that this place has given me, I have to give back, So that's why I engage in like the extracurriculars or like campus politics, For me, like I can't just have it one-sided, I can't be getting all this, knowledge and growth from this place and not give back. I'm not made like that. I have to be able to give back, So, and at the end of the day, so with that, like I just look at my academics as a job and I try to be professional. I mean, I'm only human, I have my downfalls, but at the end of the day, like I try to be as professional as I can, Yeah. So
Yeah, kind of echoes something that Professor Leslie Meek was talking about in one of our interviews, where she was like, if you don't have the time to take it super seriously, she's like, why are you here?
yeah, exactly. Like I have that same mentality, and I ask, I mean, I wouldn't ask somebody that, but I often think that to myself, because I mean, like, let's be real, like you paying for this education, and education is not cheap. So why are you gonna be paying so you can just like, not take it seriously? Like you're over here just, half, putting in half the effort. I can't do that. With me, it's either all or nothing. So I'm gonna give it my all.
Yeah, and it's interesting that kind of like your serious mindedness also translates into this desire to be active and help out a lot. So because it kind of seems like those things go hand in hand for you. Is that right?
Yeah, for sure. But to give my all, like I have to give back. But at the same time, I want to give back. Like I said, I wouldn't be able to do what I do without giving back. It just, and at the same time, when I get back, I get to advocate for for what I feel is important and what I'm passionate about. So there's also that.
Okay, so it's kind of like fuel for you because you find it maybe gratifying or fulfilling,
Yeah.
but then it's also like these are issues that are important to you.
Yeah, and then it also makes me feel like I have a voice, and that I maybe I am making a difference, because not everybody can stand up for themselves, like not everybody has that ability, not everybody has the ability to say, to take a stance and say, hey, I'm gonna take this stance and I'm gonna defend it, not everybody does that or even wants to do that. But me, I will do that. I just, I cannot not do that.
Right.
If I find something that I feel is not right or okay, then I cannot not just turn a blind eye.
Yeah, because one of the things that is interesting about Morris in particular in terms of colleges is it's a widely known fact that Morris students are very active on campus. That most people have more than one major, and
Yeah.
people are involved in multiple clubs. And for me personally, just in terms of my own experience and from the outside looking in, I kind of think to myself and have this experience: isn't that getting in the way? Isn't that being like an impediment to?
I mean, there's a lot of logic to that, I mean, there was one point where, like I did CNIA, I did the Sociology and Anthropology Society, and I came to Philosophy Club, and those are, that's a lot of time commitment, but for me personally, I mean, you make time for the things that you enjoy in life, So for me, yeah, I might do a lot, but at the same time, Like I enjoy the things that I do, and I still get my work done. And those extracurriculars, they enrich my life. Like that's how I met you. You know what I
Right.
mean? That's how I met my other friends. You know, so yeah, it's time commitment, but there's always gonna be a give and take in any decision that you make. You know, so you
Mm.
know, it's about what kind of sacrifices you were willing to make.
Right. Yeah, and it kind of sounds like you're pretty self-motivated. Like, so one of the things we've been talking about that's coming up again on this podcast is like in intrinsic versus external motivation. And in psychology ideas, people learn better if they're intrinsically motivated rather than just doing it for some external like reward, right? Like money or a grade or something like that. And so, yeah, is it fair to say that like you're very much on like the intrinsic motivation
Yeah.
side?
Oh, my motivation comes from within. You know, um, like I love to help people. I love to be able to help people and support them, and like in the things that they want to do in their life. So my most all my motivation comes from within me. You know, and the passions that I have to say help people, or when I do research, to try to help society. So yeah, all my motivation comes from within.
And so do you even feel that motivation just on any ordinary assignment that you have?
I mean, yeah, especially when I do research, or right now I'm in a class and it's communications, power, and identity, and I'm writing a paper about gang members and how they develop their identity, you know, and so I think about my cousin Forrest, and that motivates me, you know, um, and I got to do a presentation on this next week, and so I just want to, enlighten people to situations that they might not see every day or know about, you know, and try to, make force, not death happen in vain, you know.
Yeah, that's super admirable. Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's a real valuable thing because one of the things I kind of experience as a student, the thing I wonder about a lot is, yeah, for you have like a very clear sense of kind of like why you're here, what it's about, how it's valuable, and it like is just personally meaning for you in a lot of ways, and just from like a learning standpoint, that's super useful, right? So yeah, I just appreciate hearing about that because one of the things I've just been wondering is if we just acknowledge, if we grant how important this is, it seems like it would make more sense either in class or outside of class or as just some part of the college experience to get kind of clearer about what I'll just call, an educational foundation for yourself, right? So that when you do go to the class, when you do get handed any assignment, you're just so strong in that foundation for why you want to do it that it doesn't seem like a burden. It doesn't seem like an annoyance to you. It's
Yeah.
just like, oh, this is
Oh, that one more paper I got to write, or that one more chapter that have to read. Like I try not to look at like that. Like yeah, I've written a lot of papers, and we continue to write a lot of papers. That's what we do as students. But there's always an opportunity, and no matter what you're doing, in terms of if you're reading a chapter or you're writing a paper or you're preparing for a presentation or you're preparing for an exam, there's always an opportunity to learn something, and you might not even really realize what you're learning. Like growth just happens naturally, if you keep engaged with the material and keep a positive mindset about it. I mean, you're learning skills and knowledge that that you might not even know is there.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah, so that really speaks to the the mindset side of things on your side of the classroom. I'm wondering thinking about the class itself, because we've talked to various professors, and some of them have very interactive activities. I mean, foreign language, for example, they have a lot of interactive games and different tasks that they have the students do with the professor. And even in Professor Breen's political science class, they do these very elaborate simulations where they reenact certain historical events. And so these are just examples of different ways to structure a class. And then, of course, lecture is a common way. Is there any particular like class structure that's most conducive to your learning? Like me personally, I like to have a lot of discussion, be able to talk, and kind of be able to stop at any point and kind of go into something. And so when I'm taking these lecture classes where it's like no questions basically at all, that's like problematic for me. So do you have something that kind of suits you?
I mean, yeah, I do. Like I'm pretty quiet, student. I will speak my thought if super compelled, but I like the lecture, but also with the lecture though, for me when it really helps is so like if a instructor has a concept he's trying to teach you, but then he'll like give the definition of it or whatever, but then he goes and applies it to real world context, right? So like how I explained labeling theory to you,
Right.
like that's how I really understand. I mean, sometimes I can just take the literal definition and I'm all good with that. But if I'm a little bit confused and I need further explanation, if they would go into the world context of that concept, and then I'm like, oh, okay, I completely understand, But that's with me, yeah. So I mean, lecture's good with me, I mean, I understand it can be boring, it can be dry, but I've had professors lecture where, they're just completely passionate about their topic or their class, and it's just like you're standing there in awe, and I'm like, wow, I didn't know lecture, like just a dry lecture, could be this interesting and this fun, so but I'm pretty easygoing, I like variety, interaction, debate's always good, because like me, I like to just sit back and listen, so when the students engaging in debate and whatnot, I really like that as well because, I just want to sit back and listen, see what's going on, see the different sides, because I'm not opposed to hearing different, arguments, like I want to hear it all. Like, it's okay. Like, I'm not going to judge, I just tell me what you think. Like, it's okay.
Yeah, so we talked to Professor Eckerly, for example, and she's an English professor. And she just talks about, she reads these like really dense, novels or Shakespeare, right? Really dense stuff. And she just described it as just such great fun to go through that. Now, for many people, like just kind of poring over a text, it's hard to imagine how that's fun, how could it be fun. And when I kind of, pressed her about it, she said like there's just something about kind of unlocking the secret meaning and not that that's necessarily secret, but it's kind of like hidden or not obvious meaning, and you kind of unravel it or you kind of see the theme tie together and this kind of thing. So I was wondering, like, one, is intellectual work or some of your intellectual work, do you actually find it, would you use the word fun?
I definitely would. Like, for me, especially when I engage in research or just like reading a book for my personal use. I mean, granted, when I read books for myself, it still falls under criminology, yeah, that's how I do it. But then, like, also I'll read books like, Machiavelli, The Prince, or, The Art of War, or what's that one? How to influence people, or how to
win friends and influence people.
Yeah, I'm reading that one, books like that. It's fun for me, 'cause it's like you're taking bits of information and then, you're learning things, but like it's like you're building a puzzle, So you taking a little bit from over here and a little bit over here, and you're building this puzzle, and you don't know what it's gonna be, you know. But at the same time, you're learning. It's just, I don't know. It's crazy, you know. It's fun, you know. It's just stimulating, you know.
So there's a kind of like thrill in the building, and then the seeing what it's going to be, and then there's also kind of excitement because it's in process all the time.
Yeah, exactly, you know. Yeah, it's enjoyable, you know. It's self gratification, you know. Be able to learn new things, but then like implement what you learn, you know, like, you know, or, you know, take research. You find out, you know, you're doing research, you're reading all these materials, and then, you know, you get to, you know, write about it, but then you get to, you know, you add your own voice into it and your own thoughts, you know, and say, hey, maybe we should look at it from this angle, or, you know, maybe we need to be doing this instead of that, you know, to help these people.
So that sounds like almost like some like creativity there.
Yeah.
Would you call it that?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I would say what I do is like art, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I aspire to be an academic, and, you know, I'm poring over books and articles and, you know, writing papers and whatnot. But when I write a paper and I'm able to insert my own voice and my own thoughts, you know, I see that as art, you know. It's like painting a picture, you know, you're creating something.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Yeah, I had just one of our visiting philosopher people came in, and they described like philosophy as creative and similar to music that they had done, and I was like, man, I had never thought of it that way. So it's interesting to hear you kind of feeling the same vibe there.
Yeah.
So, what's one of the, if you have one, may or may not have one off the top of your head here, but like one of the best takeaways, like methodologically. So I find the fact that I've done philosophy, just being able to deconstruct arguments, right? That's a big method that I'm just so grateful to have learned, because now I feel like in any conversation, I'm like, okay, so all right, that's their premise. Okay, that's their argument. All right, I can see kind of what it rests on, this type of thing. And so that's like one of the big methodological takeaways I've had, and we've talked to our professors, and that's one of the things we've been asking them is like, what are you hoping, like what method do you hope your students take away? And so is there anything that stands out to you in that regard?
Yeah, I will have to first off agree with what you say. You know, being able to deconstruct an argument, you know, that's very useful. But also within my field, and I assume that it goes with other fields, but being able to like look at an argument, but also look at it from more than one perspective, right? So there's always going to be, you know, different perspectives whenever you're like engaging in like said phenomenon, right?
Sure.
So to be able to like be open-minded about the different types of arguments that are out there, you know, like I'm always a firm believer that, you know, you need to look at things like holistically, right? To be able to find the best option. And maybe the option is not just one thing, it's more than things, but you're only going to know that if you have an open mind and be able to listen to views that maybe you didn't really agree with at first, or that you didn't know nothing about, you know, because maybe you had the tunnel vision and you just been honed into this one way of like, oh, this is why this is going on. There's no other reason why this is going on, just because of this one thing. Well, that's generally not the case. You know, you need to be able to look at it in different lights.
Just the idea that, like, even what's the historical, what's going on psychologically, what's going on sociologically, just kind of bringing in any perspective you can. Yeah, that is super useful. Any research that you'd be interested in sharing with us?
Yeah, so I did last summer of the McNair research program. I researched domestic violence and how it impacts children. So when children are in a home where there's just domestic violence present, whether they see it or hear it, and I had never engaged in that topic at all, and that was quite eye opening for me. You know,
How did you folks look at it?
We just looked at it from a sociological perspective. So what I eventually learned was, so even if a child is in the home and they're not suffering from any abuse themselves, whether it's physical, psychological, or sexual, that they still suffer from the same mental health issues that the person that is being abused. So, you know, say, person A was abusing person B, right? And then person B, they have all these mental health issues as a result of it, depression, anxiety, suicidal tendencies, maybe eating disorders, drug and alcohol disorders, right? Because of the abuse that they're suffering. So the children that witness that, they have those same issues, And then also a child that grows up in a home where they're exposed to domestic violence, they are more likely to be in a relationship, and if it's a male, to abuse their partner, and if it's a female, to be in a relationship where they are abused. And that, I really never engaged in that topic, so this was all brand new knowledge to me. But also, so my thought in the conversation was, so the abuse that they're witnessing changes their rational thought process. And then they normalize this violence. And then they continue it. So it's a continuation of violence, much of it revolving because this irrational thought, the rationality that they have developed because of this is affecting their interpersonal communication skills. So instead of being able to talk out, what's frustrating them, what's stressing them, their default is to use violence or aggression against their partner.
Wow. And so you folks were like reading a bunch of papers? Is that how this thing goes down?
I started out with reading some books.
Some books, wow.
Yeah, some sociological books about domestic violence, and then I read some academic articles. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really intense finding, but that seems like really important one because I think even for myself, it's like maybe the obvious fact or what's seems like some kind of common sense is that if somebody got abused in this kind of way or themselves, then that would maybe be a sure sign. But even just being in proximity, you're saying is a huge determinant.
That's why I say they don't have to just see it; they could just hear it. Yeah.
Wow,
it's messed up.
Yeah, I'm in a developmental psychology class right now, and it's real tough to learn about that kind of stuff because it's like their brains are forming.
Exactly.
It's all getting locked in at this critical stage.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I say, like the violence is normalized. And what I mean by that, like it's, in a sense, they like it's okay, when they engage in that because like that's what they've seen, it could be an everyday occurrence. They've seen, violence in their home, and this is by a loved one, so, they normalize these behaviors and then it just continues the cycle of violence.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot of sounds like your world of intellectual work. It's some intense stuff, but it's very important stuff.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie. Like a lot of times, I have to put it down for a day or two, because
Oh, really?
it's not it can be very ugly,
Yeah.
and it's emotionally draining, and I tell people that too. I caution them, if you're going to engage in this type of research, you make sure you're sound mentally, because it takes its effects on me. So, but I've learned that, you just, when that happens, you get down about this, you just put it away for a while, it'll be there again when you're good to pick it back up.
Right. Okay. So yeah, what's been the most difficult part about being a student?
Yeah, that's
Or
a
maybe
tough
you're just
one.
loving it all.
No,
You're
I
just
mean, no, you gotta take care of yourself when you're in college. You need to have good self-care habits. Especially if you already have your own mental health issues, which obviously, I do have my own mental health issues. So I struggle with the self-care and taking time out for myself, whether it be, I'm going to watch that movie when I get home, or it's okay to, watch a couple episodes on the Netflix, or, it's okay to, okay, yeah, you can be done for the day, and, you can do what you want to do, to, take care of yourself. I struggle with that a lot. Because, I'm the type of person, I just want to keep going. I just want to, I just want to go. But, I need to take care of myself, because when I do take care of myself a lot, I'm more productive, So the biggest challenge for me is, just, taking care of myself, and having good self-care habits, so that my mental health doesn't spiral out of control.
Definitely.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I really appreciate you mentioning that. I find that's like the thing I'm trying to work out, is that right balance, and I think a lot of us on the campus are working with that.
It's that's what it's about, finding balance in between, between work and personal life, and taking time out for yourself, There's a lot to juggle, in this space,
Mm.
you know.
And so on the other side of things, like what's been the most rewarding part of being a student?
That feeling you get when you killed that research paper,
When you kill it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you finished the semester that felt like it would never end,
That's how I'm feeling right now.
Yeah. Well, probably a lot of us. I know I'm in there
Trying
with
to
you.
get there.
Yeah. Just, or maybe, just small things, like you made it through the week. You went to all your classes. You did all your assignments. You read that book. Yeah. It's
that like personal gratification piece.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when I finish a semester, that's a feeling that I only get when a semester is over. It just feels so awesome, and I'm just I'm like, yeah, you did it. You know what I mean? You stuck it out. You got it done. Because it's it's easy. It's easy to be like, oh yeah, I'm not gonna do this. I'm gonna quit. You know what I mean? But to stick it out and do what needs to be done, that's hard. So I give much props to everybody who sticks it out and can make it through and do what they got to do in this space to survive.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so I think this might be the last question. We'll see. So let's say you could, you get in my time machine, okay, and we can do one thing in this time machine. We can go visit your former self before they were Charles, student, superhero, and you could give yourself some advice. So maybe when you're first starting out, whenever that was, I know, it's maybe been a long path here in various educations at different times, that kind of thing. But, just maybe whenever you're thinking of like when you're first kind of starting out, or maybe a point when you were struggling, what's the advice you would give to yourself, kind of knowing everything you know now?
Just to know that, that I will be okay, and to trust the process. Just trust the process, do what needs to be done today and you'll be okay,
Like don't get caught up kind of thinking about how it's all going to work.
Yeah, I mean, if you try to, concentrate too much on what needs to be done tomorrow and next week and next month and, what's coming ahead in the next year, like that can be overwhelming. You could take it as like, oh, I don't know if I can accomplish all this, There's so much that needs to be done. Does it ever end? But, what I've learned is if you can just take it and break it down and just do a little bit at a time and keep going a little bit at a time, maybe, you write that paper and you write half of it one day and then you write the other half the next day, Just take it a little bit at a time, step at a time, You'll be okay, you'll get it done, But you start looking at everything, you're getting overwhelmed and you're like, oh, man, I got to do this and I got to do that and I got all these books to read and all these papers to write and I need to study for this exam and, just take it one day at a time, you'll be all right.
It's awesome advice, very pertinent to my situation right now.
And that concludes this episode. Big thanks to Charles again for coming on the podcast.
Links to the references our guest mentioned can be found in the show notes. Before we go here, a big thank you to the Mellon Foundation and the Humanities Division for supporting this podcast. The views and opinions expressed are solely those of the individuals participating and do not represent the University of Minnesota Morris or the University of Minnesota system. You can find our podcast on iTunes or anywhere you get your podcasts. And if you want to help out the show, please leave us a review on the iTunes store or share the podcast with others. Thanks for listening.
This has been Humanities Engaged.